Hae, the Executioner, also known as Veteran 2, is a sequel to Veteran, a 2015 action crime thriller film. And if you're unfamiliar, Veteran's about a no-nonsense police detective who discovers a young criminal who always pisses all over everyone else with no regard for the law. The two of them clash heads. It was one of the biggest critical and financial hits in South Korea and maybe even in Canada where I watched it. But it was a great sort of simple action movie, you know, with crime thriller elements. It was really grounded. Great performance from Jung-min and of course Hae-in. So this sequel has been in development for a while. They were supposed to create it in like 2 or 3 years, but it's been 9 years. But the director finally wrote it, and it was worth the wait, to be honest. This is about the return of Do-cheol. At the beginning of the film, he and his team, they work in violent crimes and they stop a gambling ring. Very goofy action sequence, lots of flashy camera work, drone shots. I was a little bit worried because the movie might have been too goofy. If the entire film is like this sort of tone, it's going to be like a jokey sort of weird half-assed comedy. But the movie quickly gets serious with the main plot. We're focusing on Haechi, also known as Justice God. A Twitch streamer named Editor Justice has sort of discovered a serial killer of sorts that's operating in Korea. This serial killer targets people who got off too lightly in the eyes of the law, and the killer finds a way to get to them and brutally murders them in the sort of the same vein as the way they did their crime. So for example, let's say a junkie is robbing a convenience store. While he's running out, he pushes a woman, she falls, hits her head, and dies. And the junkie gets arrested, but he gets a light sentence because it was an accident, manslaughter, gets out in a couple years. Haechi would come after that person and then find a way to bash their head in, basically, and they'll do it, you know, in the middle of the night around the same area where that convenience store was. That's their MO. So Do-cheol and his team has to basically go in there and prove this to their new boss, but the new boss isn't interested in the serial killer because that means they have to catch the serial killer. And then we quickly find out who the killer is immediately. The film actually tells you who the killer is at the very beginning of the film. It basically becomes a really interesting sort of way of introducing a sort of thematic heft to the story. The beginning of the movie has a lot of exposition going on. There's lots of clips of news, clips of YouTube, clips of streams to explain the killer and how they've been doing things and why the people like this killer. And it sort of, you know, has these themes of the police also can sympathize with this killer because they work tired, you know, exhausting hours. They don't get paid much, but they have to deliver justice. Sometimes criminals get off really lightly or not at all, or sometimes they get dinged in pay or paperwork. It's a very bureaucratic nightmare for this world of police, detectives, and catchers of criminals. But sometimes criminals get away, and you know, sometimes it's very cathartic to find out that a scumbag that escaped the law got pushed off a building or something like that. So the movie has a lot of great direction. There's like this sort of fade sort of aesthetic they're going for, where like a character will be talking and maybe in the top right corner you'll see the face of someone. And it adds a very dreamlike giallo kind of vibe to it, almost like a comic book. The director, he's done many films. I've seen many of the director's films. I don't really care for The City of Violence or The Unjust, but I really like Veteran. And Veteran 2 is a very strongly directed film. Great foot chase, fight sequences. Whenever there's action on screen, it's very dynamic. There's also a car chase in there too. And this movie has a very robust direction, really good acting. And I think that the really strong antagonist, because this is a vigilante killer. This is someone who's very similar to the same sort of morals as our main character, but just a twisted reflection. And the movie even has that, and even has multiple shots of the killer's face in a mirror to sort of showcase that this is someone who, you know, could be, Do-cheol could turn into if he just sort of stays on the wrong path. But he's obviously a righteous, moral cop. He would never do that. So even though he likes Haechi, he has to stop him when he finds out who he is. And the movie, it's pretty long. It's 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like a long movie. There's a lot of subplots in the film, and you think that they don't really amount to much, but then they sort of come together at the end of the film for a really satisfying, bone-crunching finale. Really good fight choreography and climax, good story and characters. This is a movie that really pushes at the protagonist and attacks him physically and I guess morally in a lot of different ways. It's a great antagonist. You know, I'm glad that they took their time to develop a really good story for the main character to sort of brood over, and a lot of good twists and excitement. This is a really well put together action thriller film. It might even be better than the first, I think. So I give Veteran 2, I, the Executioner, a 7.5 out of 10.